Your basic study, basic preparation of political science for UPSC should be complete by 30th of December 2023. What part of pol science syllabus is either not relevant, not directly relevant, or very, very less relevant to GS for prelims? Okay, and then focus more on that part before 30th of December. Any and every officer who functions in the civil service, and you youngsters who are now preparing for civil service, okay, you have to understand everything, you have to do everything within the framework of, okay, listen carefully, within the framework of Constitution, laws, and basic human morality. And let us begin to enjoy our first session on political science as optional subject for the 2023-24 batch, and you who have picked up political science as the optional subject. Here are 4 points I want to make before I come to the 6 questions you have sent me. Overall, the first point, I'll be telling you which is the second, then the third, then the fourth. So don't mix up. The first point, okay. First point is broadly about political science as optional subject. My concern that your focused study and preparation of pol science has already begun in the right earnest, maybe a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, etc. What I want to bring to your notice is that your basic study, basic preparation of political science for UPSC should be complete by 30th of December 2023. Plan your studies in such a way that you have completed your basic reading and the study on or before 30th of December. Now, this suggestion is in a broad light, broad frame, okay, that when we start preparing for UPSC, we should first focus on main exam and complete our basic reading of main exam by 30th of December. And then effectively from 1st of January, let us focus fully, entirely, totally on the upcoming challenge called the prelims. Remember, it is a challenge because remember that about 14 lakh best of the brains in the country will be appearing for this prelim scheduled for Sunday, 26th of May, 2024. So the first challenge we need to overcome successfully is indeed the prelims on 26th of May. And if the prelims on 28th of May, 2023, the prelims that took place, if that is any measure, then your mind must be ready for toughest possible exam, mind you. As it is by definition, UPSC is India's toughest exam. And then the prelim this year, okay, was history's toughest paper that I know. I have spoken this with you. So the mind needs to be ready for that. So what we must be successfully overcoming is the prelims. And therefore, our strategy to focus on prelim effectively from 1st of January. Prelims and prelims alone. Therefore, this is the time to focus fully on mains And our target is completing our study, our reading, our preparation of mains by 30th of December 2023. I hope you noticed my wording, huh? I said completing our reading, our study of the main exam by 30th of December. That also what goes without saying, and in limited time that we have today, I won't waste any more time explaining to you why and how we don't have sufficient time to prepare for the main exam after the prelims. After that would be a very wrong plan to do. That okay, I will prepare for mains after the prelims. Huh? After the prelim, you don't have basic time to prepare for mains. Our time after prelim, okay, is to be basically focused on two factors. One is the revision of the study we have already done. Okay, that includes keeping ourselves update. And the second one is indeed the writing practice. Post-prelim time, effectively beginning May 29, will be the writing practice indeed. And revision. That too until the results come up. And now we know that UPSC is sort of preponing results every year, with every year that passes. Again, I will not spend too much of time telling you that I remember the years when UPSC, the disciplined body that it is, UPSC used to announce the results for the prelims on the 40th day, 40th day. Huh? Now it has come down to 20th, 20. And it could also be early now with increasing technology, IT, and blah, blah, blah. Huh? So once the results come out, and all my best wishes for all of you to absolutely clear the prelims, okay? Then that is full absolute time to only practice writing papers. I myself know that I am going to conduct one full session on handling the main exam when I conduct a full session for our UPSC batch. There I will be talking about main exam, including the optional also. Huh? Like the optional will have 8 questions divided into 2 parts, section A, section B. In both papers, first question. So respectively question 1 and 5 will be compulsory questions. And they are most likely to be 10-mark questions, 5 questions of 10 marks. So question 1 and 5 will be 50 marks. It will be compulsory question, but it will what is most likely is that it will consist of 5 short comments of 10 mark each, which means 150 words. So the skill required to write extraordinary 115-word note. Okay. Then, as you know, I expect you to know that from remaining questions, you will be required to pick any 3 with at least 1 from each section. So what it means is you have a very small tolerance, flexibility that you are required to pick up at least 1 question from each section. And the only leeway sort of tolerance is another 1 extra question from the section in which you think you are stronger, where you would do better. Okay. Those questions also we know that they will be consisting of 50 mark each, huh? But they are likely to be divided into 2 questions of 15 marks and 1 question of 20 marks. But remember that UPSC is capable of producing any surprise. So the mind, while we study the pattern, our mind should be ready for any change in the pattern. In my point 1 itself, again, what goes without saying is my practical tip for all of you to study previous 5 years of question papers. Very carefully read previous 5 years of pol science question papers. They will give you an idea of the kind of questions that come up, of the required depth, which is as deep as possible, deeper than what you can imagine, mind you. A shallow knowledge will not be expected. One of the 6 questions I have received is indeed about the requisite depth and how should we go on studying and how should we go on connecting. I will be speaking fuller details when I specifically come to that point. But in my introductory part, as much time as I need, that's my liberty. I'm going to take that liberty. The practical tip I'm making it a point to pass on to you is to study previous 5 years of question papers so that you get an idea of the kind of challenge and the mind begins to establish grip over the body knowledge, the body of the knowledge overall. No? So completing our study and reading of pol science for mains by 30th of December. Okay, this is a broad principle. Now within that, okay, I hope your mind also begins to focus along with me as I am focusing. Okay, within that, I expect you to have realized by now, and therefore I hope, I'm reasonably certain you will immediately agree when I tell you, okay, that about 75% of UPSC pol science syllabus is 100% valid for GS for prelims. I'm taking a 5-second pause to let the point sink in. About 75% of pol science syllabus for UPSC is directly valid for GS in even prelims, mind you. Okay? Like paper 1, pol science paper 1, section A, broadly consists of political thinkers, political concepts, and on some topics, India or current events and issues will come into picture. But as a thumb rule, I have normally understood and explained section A of paper 1 as rather theoretical, largely theoretical. That part is less valid for prelims GS. Prelims GS. While you must have begun to understand, you must have begun to realize that actually studying pol science also builds us up, for prelims GS, and among GS 1, 2, 3, 4, especially GS 2 in the main exam, especially GS 2, and also for anything in GS 1, 2, 3, anything and everything that relates to international issues. Mind you, our study of pol science helps us. G20 is just over. And it so happens that yesterday afternoon, I was watching the concluding part of G20. See, I'm so much into this session that I started calling GS20. And you are also listening so intently that you didn't pick the slip in my speaking. G20. So yesterday, as I was watching the concluding part, the Samapan of G20, careful comment on G20 formed in my mind. I could post the comment in English. I could post the comment in Marathi. Yesterday, I made a choice of posting it in Marathi. That is on Facebook. Anyone interested can go to my page. I'm not making the point about G20 per se. The title I have chosen for my brief take on what are the takeaways for this G20? My title is Vishwamitra Bharat. Vishwamitra Bharat. And the essential point I'm making is that, okay, many of us, most of us, including myself, we dream of India emerging as Vishwa Guru. Okay? That's not my personal dream. That is also not your personal or anybody's personal dream. This is the mission to which everyone from Vivekananda to Gandhiji dedicated India to, Bharat to. The mission. What is the role of India, that is Bharat? And the role is to be the moral leader of the world. And by moral leader of the world, it means showing the path of peace and friendship. And the G20 that concluded yesterday is a step in the right direction. So my comment has the title Vishwamitra Bharat. Okay. I took the liberty of spending last 2-3 minutes on this. But the point I'm making is all our study of pol science also prepares us for GS prelims and all 4 GS papers. Mind you, I'm very carefully saying all 4. All 4, okay? From GS 1, 2, 3, it is about current events in all walks of life. In GS 1, 2, 3, you will have current events in all walks of life. For example, GS 1 has that subcomponent of geography. And there, even in G20, the Delhi Declaration, we have a dedicated section to SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, or renewable sources of energy, including the biofuel, like special program announced yesterday. Do I have to separately tell you that all these go into our preparation of pol science? Entire paper 2 is all pol science, essentially focused on the constitution. Okay. And GS3 predominantly consisting of the economy and science and technology component. Okay. Still has all pol science in it. So when we say India as the voice of global south, okay, and then as the voice of global south, this particular infrastructural project of connecting Europe and India via Saudi Arabia and the Gulf countries. It is, of course, an economic project. Of course, a challenge to China's BRI, Belt Road Initiative, and India coming up fast again. But it is also part of that economy subcomponent in paper 3. And remember, any and all functioning of WTO, the WTO summits that happen, they become a part of our pol science preparation and also GS3. Okay. Do I have to separately tell you how pol science is relevant for GS4 also? Actually, the essence of GS4 is the constitution. The essence of GS4 is the constitution. And for our comprehensive batch, from week after the next one, I intend to conduct my special sessions devoted to GS4 before we close for Diwali break, a 15-day Diwali break. So my idea with UPSC GS batch, comprehensive one, I will begin to conduct special sessions on GS4. There I will be making a point in fuller details. I'm just speaking one line right now. Just one line here. My line is that entire GS4. Hold your breath and listen very carefully. Because the single line, as usual, is worth a minimum lecture of 2 hours. I'm summarizing it in one line. Okay. Entire GS4. Any and every officer who functions in the civil service And you youngsters who are now preparing for civil service, okay, you have to understand everything. You have to do everything within the framework of, okay, listen carefully, within the framework of constitution, laws, and basic human morality. These are the three words I always explain. Entire GS4, entire GS4. How should an officer behave? So when it comes to case studies, which is the key that you apply to case studies? GS4, huh? So it will be section B. Or section A questions and you have to write the answers. Now you have to study for GS4. The single key to be applied to understanding all topics in GS4, they are divided in 6 parts. If you have seen the syllabus for GS4, 6 parts. Any word that comes up in GS4 and apply this key and you will see a whole answer open up before you. The key is constitution, laws, and basic human morality. Details I will be explaining there. Okay. But even for GS4, entire pol science is valid. So our study of pol science also builds us up for GS for prelims and GS 1, 2, 3, 4 for mains also. Now I took this much of time for one more reason, that is for you to carefully understand the strategy of preparation. The strategy for preparation. I hope now the moment I make that sentence, the meaning will immediately be clear to you. Okay. That while on one side I did tell you to complete your basic study and reading of entire pol science by 30th of December. Huh? My sentence has one very important practical significance and therefore a concerned tip. Listen very carefully. Out of the entire pol science syllabus, think very carefully about what part of the syllabus is either not relevant or less relevant for prelims. GS. What part of pol science syllabus is either not relevant, not directly relevant, or very, very less relevant to GS for prelims. Okay. And then focus more on that part before 30th of December. Complete that part down to the last detail before 30th of December. I know I'm also making your job simpler and making it more crystal clear before you. Okay. So think of pol science paper 1. Huh? Section A. And out of that section A also, predominantly the thinkers. Okay, let's say from Plato and Aristotle, through Marx, Lenin, Mao, or also modern Indian thinkers. Fortunately, they are there, Indian thinkers and modern. So from Chanakya to Babasaheb Ambedkar, Gurudev Tagore, Pandit Nehru, and now M.N. Roy, Manavendranath Roy for us. And I'm still losing one name. I'm sorry. Why am I losing one more name for modern India political thinkers? I'm sort of, why am I missing? Huh? And with the years that pass, don't be surprised if you get a question on integral humanism of Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyay. Possible. That is how UPSC goes. That every single word may not be there in the topic, but with the current relevance, etc., the questions may come up. And I know in some sessions that follow, I may be sharing, talking to you about that integral humanism of Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyay. My point is, paper 1 section A will be predominantly about these thinkers and various political concepts. Okay, so like justice and liberty, democracy, and then various theories of democracy, etc. Okay, they will be either not relevant or less relevant for GS in prelims. I have to say everything in pol science does relate to GS in prelims also, mind you. Okay. So, is it possible that GS question paper in prelims has a question on Plato or Aristotle? The moment I define the question, I think your mind will tell you that the possibility cannot be ruled out. Okay. Then, what is possible is there may not be a direct question on, say, Plato or Aristotle in GS, UPS, prelims. Huh? Okay. But your knowledge of Plato and Aristotle will definitely help you even in GS prelims. This holds good for like Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau. The three together called as theorists of social contract theory. Because the social contract theory is directly relevant for understanding democracy. Okay. Same goes for Marx, Lenin, and Mao at the world level, say, and an equally great Indian thinker in form of M.N. Roy, Manavendranath Roy. His political philosophy is called radical humanism. So, how far is it possible that there would be a direct question in GS prelim, GS, a direct question on Marx, Lenin, or Mao? Okay, the possibility may be thin, but your understanding of Marx, Lenin, Mao will build you to understand global events, therefore current events, including geopolitics, and even India's foreign relations, mind you. Today, as I talk to you today, the official ideology of contemporary China is Maoism. And that Maoism, ideologically speaking, okay, is absolutely nothing but Marxism, Leninism. And especially Xi Jinping, who now says, I'm expecting you to have noticed this, that Xi Jinping says that previous 3 presidents of China neglected Maoism. He says they departed from the original purity of Maoist ideology. Maoist is Marxism, Leninism. And there is that Mao's Red Book, the Red Book that summarizes all ML and therefore Maoism also. Xi Jinping says that Deng Xiaoping, Hu Jintao, and Jiang Zemin, I missed a slight sequence, chronological sequence. In chronological sequence, actually it is Deng Xiaoping, Jiang Zemin, and Hu Jintao. Xi Jinping blames them for departing or diverting from pure ML, Marxism, Leninism. And he wants to revive the Red Book of Mao and ensure that the Chinese Communist Party follows Marxist-Leninist principles again. Okay, so understanding Marx and Lenin and Mao places you in a better position to understand global issues, to understand China, and therefore also to understand India-China relationship, mind you. Okay, including, may I say, one possible reason why Xi Jinping was absent in G20 conference. Why Xi Jinping was absent in G20 conference. I'll not spend time over there. Huh? Now, not only that ML and Maoism will place you in a better position to understand global issues, ML and Maoism will also place you in a better position to understand Indian events, mind you, India's current events. Naxalism is Maoism, and Maoism is ML, Marxism-Leninism. So Naxalism is not just a law and order problem, mind you. And Naxalism is not about the rights of tribals and involving tribals in the development process. Okay, make no mistake about it. The goal of Naxalism is to bring about the Maoist revolution in India. It is overthrow of democracy in India. As per ML, Marxism-Leninism, the ideological goal of Naxalism is to establish the dictatorship of the proletariat. The term you will have to understand Marxism. Okay? So even as we are enjoying all this, the point I'm making is, for careful planning of our, for careful strategy of planning our studies, think of those parts from the syllabus which are comparatively less relevant or not relevant for GS Prelim. GS Prelim. So I'm drawing your attention to large parts of section A of paper 1. Okay? They are comparatively less relevant for prelims GS. Huh? Even in making that point, I told you how they will be connected with even prelims GS. Okay. Then come to paper 2. Again, section A. And a substantial part, I'm saying. Okay. This time I'm not saying large part, but I'm saying substantial part of section A of paper B, paper 2, okay, will be less relevant or remotely relevant, or let's say partially not relevant for GS prelims. Okay. Again, for example, think of various theories of international relations. They become part of section A, paper 2. Okay, various theories of international relation. Okay, they may be not directly relevant for GS prelims, or their relevance may be sort of remote or kind of indirect. So among various theories of international relation, okay, the most relevant for even GS prelims will be the one known as the realist theory or the realist school of international relations. All thinkers from Machiavelli to Hans Morgenthau and John Mearsheimer, and the current outstanding, probably the best exponent and practitioner of the realist theory of international relation is Henry Kissinger, who just attained 100 years of his life this year. The realist theory of international relation is relevant for our direct understanding of current events of international importance, better perception, and therefore a contribution to preparing for GS prelims, mind you. Okay. But you take up, say, systems theory of international relation. You can find an indirect relation with current events. Go on studying that. I am there to respond to your questions. But I hope you get my point when I tell you that even in G20, okay, when India says that restructuring or reforming United Nations Security Council is required. Okay, so India needs to be there as a permanent member with veto powers. But then India is not batting for our seat alone, representation to various parts of the world, changing the composition of UNSC also. Huh? I hope you understand that actually this point relates to the systems theory, system of international relation, and the systems theory. Okay. Now, this systems theory in pol science originates basically from the systems theory in biology, actually. The root of systems theory in pol science is actually in biology. So when we say respiratory system, okay, the blood circulation system, nervous system, reproductive system, we are talking of biological systems. To pick up from there and apply that point to international relations becomes the systems theory in political science. So you will see that it is remotely related to GS prelims. Okay. Then these schools called the behavioral school or the behavioral approach to international relations. And then there is this thing called post-behavioral school or post-behavioral approach to international relations. Okay. They are also equated to, I can see that you are taking careful notes. So the behavioral school is also broadly and basically called the modernist school or the modernist approach to pol science in general, but international relations in particular. Huh? And then similarly, therefore, there is a postmodern theory or postmodern school of, again, pol science in general and international relations in particular. As pol science students for UPSC, you will be required to understand all this. But I hope your mind itself has by now told you that yes, they are important, but remotely connected to GS prelims, mind you. Okay. Now, the reason I took so much of time explaining this is now to consolidate and crystallize one practical suggestion. I told you, think of that part of pol science syllabus which is either not directly relevant to GS prelims or its relevance is indirect or remote. Huh? Here comes my practical tip. Focus more on that part until 30th of December. Ensure that you really that you really establish your grip over that part before 30th of December. I am expecting your mind to have already told you a very simple reason why I took so much of time to explain this. Okay? Because that part, which is relevant for GS prelims, okay, our study of that part will continue beyond even 1st January 2024. Okay? It will actually continue until even 24th of May 2024 because it's relevant for GS prelims. All of it is relevant. Now I repeat, entire section B, paper 1 is essentially the constitution. It is 100% relevant for prelims. Almost entire section B, paper 2 is essentially international relations, international issues. I will actually tell you a summary of entire section B, paper 2 in half a line, not even a full line, half a line. Because essentially section B, paper 2 is world after 1945. The entire world after the Second World War. And therein also, with the passage of time, you will see a greater focus on post-1991 world. By post-1991 world, I mean all LPG. All liberalization, privatization, globalization. And its implications for the global order. And the global order that as of today is undergoing a major shift, a major change. After Second World War, until 1991, the world was bipolar. USA versus Soviet Russia. That Soviet Russia collapsed and disintegrated in 1991. So the world that emerged was now unipolar. United States of America was the only true world power. You can broadly say that this scene remains until about September 2008. Okay? By September 2008, the subprime crisis, the alleged decline of USA is supposed to come to surface. And at the same time, again, the alleged rise of China as a world power is supposed to begin in the right earnest. But 2008 to now is still that borderline zone. But talking of today, nobody can deny that by now China has emerged as a world power, okay? And maybe the world is bipolar again today. Not only that the world is bipolar today, but the experts have begun to talk about current global situation as Cold War II. Cold War II, we will have to understand, go deeper there. But like 1945 to 1991 was Cold War I. That ended with disintegration and downfall of Soviet Russia, and therefore end of Soviet Russia as a superpower that saw eyeball to USA. But now China, it's an undeniable fact. And even we as Indians need to reckon the fact, because it's a direct threat to India that China has emerged as a world power. And in the Chinese line of fire, mind you, the main target in the Chinese line of fire may be USA, okay, but we are first in the line. In the Chinese line of fire, make no mistake about it, India is first in the line. So we need to understand, okay. And therefore now, the aspiring India, as of today, India also aspires to rise as a genuine world power. But in our aspirations of rising as a world power, the dream we are giving to the world is not that of either unipolar world or bipolar world. We are saying multipolar world. India is batting for multipolar world, where interest of the nations will be properly reconciled. So the defining principle of our foreign policy as of today is strategic autonomy. And we respect such a parallel strategic autonomy for each country, how to reconcile it in a way that world peace is maintained, that is India's vision for global relations, that can be summarized in the term multipolar world. Okay, this is paper 2 section B. Predominantly, essentially paper 2 section B. So I hope now by now it is clear to you how the study of that part of pole science syllabus, which is directly applicable to even GS prelims, okay, that study will continue beyond 30th of December till even 24th of May. There is a reason why I'm being this specific. And in our comprehensive session, I will explain that and maybe also crack my jokes. But the point I'm saying here is simple. That one day before prelim, May 25, you should be relaxing like a top-class loafer. Relaxing. May 25 is not the day to frantically go on studying, sweat, fret and fume, and scan across the pages of revision and all. That is only up to May 24. May 25 is to be totally relaxed. Maybe watch a couple of episodes of Friends. Enjoy, have a nice day. If someone sees you on 25th of May, that person should not even believe that next day you are giving India's toughest exam. And if that person is told, he or she should be surprised. Oh my God, you are giving UPSC. And how can you be so relaxed today? But that is our goal. To be totally relaxed on May 25. And with that relaxed mindset, head for the prelim on 26th of May. I have taken a rather substantial time to talk to you about all this. You may still remember that I'm still on to point 1 that I want to share with you. Okay. Now, it is in that light that my sessions with you are planned. I hope you may agree that basically my sessions are not meant for my lecture on pole science. There are our faculty, including Ketan and others, and they will be covering the syllabus. My sessions are essentially meant to be special, and by that special, what it means is that your study goes on, our regular sessions go on, your regular reading of newspapers, etc. goes on, and through all that study, whatever doubts that emerge, the doubts that you think they have no ready-made answer, no sort of single source, you are, of course, most welcome to ask our other faculty, and I do know. I'm not saying I just believe. I know that even other faculty, including Ketan, are in a position to respond to your questions. But such doubts that you think you want to ask me, okay, my sessions are meant for that. And it is in that light that we have planned 7 sessions beginning today. 7 sessions before Diwali break. So we are going to continue beyond Diwali also. Remember, actually our weekly session will almost continue till mid-March or even end of March. There will be a short break during Diwali, but our sessions and our interaction will continue. But right now we have designed these 7 sessions, okay? 3 in September are to be focused on paper 1. And for the best use of even these 3, I will suggest you to focus on that part of paper 1 which is either not relevant for GS prelims or less relevant for So it is like focus on that, study it deeper, come up with your questions, and then by 30th of December, we will set it aside and continue to focus on remaining parts of GST. So 3 sessions in September, and then we have 4 sessions in October before we close for Diwali. Those 4 are to be used for paper 2. And there also, if you could, during that time, if you could focus more on again that part of paper 2, which is either not relevant or less relevant for GS prelims. And then post Diwali also, our sessions will continue. This is where my point number 1 is over. Point 1 I wanted to share with you. I know remaining 3 points may barely take like 6 minutes. I don't know. Yeah, we will be left with time to come to your questions. Second point, okay, is my concern and my expectation that your study has already begun in the right earnest, that you have begun to go deeper into pol science. And the point I'm making is, for UPSC pol science, there are some books which are absolutely mandatory reading for pol science as optional subject for UPSC. Okay? I'm sure Ketan and others have already told you the list of those books. And I would like to be sure that you have accordingly planned your studies and have begun to go deeper. So deeper understanding of like section A, paper 1. Just think of theory of justice. So Raoul's theory of justice. And then John Rawls himself wrote a book with the title Theory of Justice. That was as back as 1971. And then Amartya Sen wrote an exclusive book on John Rawls' theory of justice. Rawls' theory of justice can be summarized in one line. Okay? If utilitarianism says greatest good of greatest number, the whole Bentham, Mill and Company. And I am expecting you to know and remember that Macaulay belonged to the utilitarian school. And the whole like 18th and 19th century utilitarianism can really be summarized in this phrase, greatest good of greatest number. And okay, then subsequent classification of pleasures and pains and a human effort to have surplus of pleasures over pains, including the structure and functioning of political system aimed at increasing pleasures over pains. I just told you the entire summary of utilitarianism. But even that can be summarized in half a phrase, half a line, a good phrase, and that is greatest good of greatest number. The principle to be applied for working of the state with capital S, state, Rajya Samstha, state as an institution. So government as an institution. What is the criteria for its behavior? So utilitarianism says that the criteria is greatest good of greatest number. Every such measure, every such policy which results in greatest good of the greatest number, I am expecting your mind to be already telling you the deeper philosophical implications. Okay, that also I am summarizing right now. That anything that government does, take your time to think. Okay? Nothing Nothing ever can be good for 100% population. Nothing. Take as much time as you want. Think as deep as you want. Nothing can ever be absolutely universally good for everyone. What is good for some people may be bad for some other people. So government takes some measure, but that measure may be good for some people, but not good or bad for some other people. Any decision you take. The Monetary Policy Committee of Reserve Bank, okay, increases interest rates. Is it good for all people in India? And I'm expecting your mind to tell you that no, it is not good for all people in India. RBI needs to take steps for controlling inflation, because inflation means mahagai. Cost of living goes up. So inflation troubles especially poor people, poor and lower middle class. Inflation troubles everyone, but more so for the poor and lower middle class. So RBI has to control inflation. Actually, controlling inflation is one of the major responsibilities of RBI. Therefore, RBI increases the rates. Okay? But because now the interest rates are increased, the middle class may suffer. The rich people may suffer. Those who have taken loans from banks will suffer because their monthly installment increases. Interest rate is increased. So the surplus, consumable surplus that the middle class has gets reduced. Because of that increased interest, it has to be paid to the bank. Nothing, but nothing that government does can ever be universally good. Whatever government does will be good for some people and bad for some other people, which is where enter utilitarianism. And it says that when it is aware of this dilemma, this inevitable deadlock, okay, so what should government do? The utilitarian solution is greatest good of the greatest number. That the government should design and implement policies which result in greatest good of the greatest number. And we will be studying pole science and go deeper in some day, trying to understand Kant and then other thinkers, including Hegel, and then through Marx, etc., blah, blah, blah. We will come to that. My point is, I hope now you immediately pick up that point, that while the utilitarian philosophy talks about greatest good of greatest number, John Rawls' theory of justice talks about greatest good of the weakest number. I just told you the entire summary of Rawls' theory of justice. What is justice? So Rawls says that number one task of the state is delivery of justice. Okay. And then Rawls' solution. How should state achieve establishment of justice? The Rawls solution is greatest good of the greatest number. So Rawls says that the whole social structure is like a chain, okay, an interlinked, interconnected. The whole society and all political system is an interlinked, interconnected chain. Once you understand the metaphor, you will immediately pick up the point that therefore Rawls says, okay, that any chain is as strong or as weak as the weakest link, mind you. The weakest link. You may have a very strong chain and you may think it is very strong, but the weakest link is the soft spot And if there is a strain at that level of weakest link, the whole structure will snap and collapse. So any chain is as strong or as weak as the weakest link. And therefore, Raul says that that is where the state should focus in achieving its number one task of justice, establishing justice. The state should focus on greatest good of the weakest number. You strengthen the weakest and the whole chain will be strengthened. How I wish that the moment I have just summarized the theory of justice by Rawls for you, okay, I do expect of you, for your mind, to immediately tell you the Gandhian concept of Antyodaya. Antyodaya. This is what Gandhiji said. That every thinker, every planner, every civil servant, every leader, okay, whenever he or she is thinking about what policies should I form, how should I behave, what steps should I take, Gandhiji said, think of the last man on the ladder of social, political, hierarchical organization. Gandhiji said, think of the last man on the ladder. Okay? And then ask yourself, what you are about to do, is it going to increase the welfare of that person? Gandhiji says, is it going to result into material, moral and spiritual development of that person? This is Gandhiji's definition, and please remember. And as Ravina happily remembers, and she has posted in the chat box, yes, of course, it is the famous Gandhiji's talisman. Important for our study of pole science, and equally, or in fact even more important, for our study of GS4. So Gandhiji says, think of that last man on the ladder. And he brings two very critical parts. I know that someday, maybe in the comprehensive session or with you, I'll be talking at greater length. But Gandhiji draws our attention to two parts. One is his definition of development. He says, everything you do, does it result in the material, moral and spiritual development of that person? Antyodaya, last man on the ladder. But Gandhiji also says the second very beautiful part, extremely beautiful and deeply profound part, because Gandhiji's second part is everything you are about to do. Hold your breath and listen very carefully. Gandhiji says, okay, everything you are about to do, does it increase that person's control over his own destiny? His or her own destiny. Does that increase? Whatever state does, whatever government does, one criteria is, does it result in the development? And that development is material, moral and spiritual development of that person. But Gandhiji's idea doesn't end over there. In fact, it goes deeper, becomes more profound when Gandhiji says that every such step, every such policy by the state, okay, which increases that person's control over his or her own destiny. If I had time, I would actually engage you for 1.5 hours only on this line. Only on them. What a beautiful, what deeply profound this line is. For government, for state to do every such thing that increases that person's control over one's own destiny. Not government's control, mind you. Not state control. Not all powers are centralized, and the economy will be run from centralized control. And because we are looking after your welfare, okay, this is a talk about increasing degrees of freedom. The perfect word to be used and understood here is increasing degrees of freedom. Our freedom. Individual freedom, not state control. That you are not to be under state control. So I even summarize that. I did it because, in light of my second point, asking you to focus on those parts and your study. Those parts which are less or not relevant for GS prelims and the mandatory reading. Okay. So I picked up this example, and therefore I connected Raoul's with Gandhiji. May I now say that actually Gandhiji's concept of Antyodaya, okay, is deeper than Raoul's concept of justice. Greatest good of weakest number. Because for Gandhiji, Antyodaya is the starting point. And then Gandhiji's true successor in every sense of the term. Okay. So now I'm reminded of that name that I forgot a while ago. I'm happy that I'm reminded of that name. Okay. Because among modern, possible, even political thinkers that need to figure in your preparation, there is this great man called Vinoba. His full name happens to be Vinoba Bhave. Gandhiji himself called Vinoba as his true successor. To the extent to which Gandhiji's legacy can be sort of separated, classified, compartmentalized, to the extent to which it can be done. Panditji, Nehru, was Gandhiji's political successor at best. This is also what Gandhiji said. Gandhiji, that Nehru is the political successor of Gandhiji. If we examine Nehruvian ideology, you may probably agree with me that Gandhiji may have declared that the person Pandit Nehru is the successor of the person Gandhiji. But if you take a look at ideology, okay, Nehruvian ideology is anything but Gandhian ideology. Nehruvian ideology is practically on the opposite end of the Gandhian ideology. From ideological point of view, the true successor, the true inheritor of Gandhian legacy is Vinoba Bhave. In every sense of the term. We will have to study the Bhudan movement, on which I have written one full golden page, Soneri Pan, in Panchattar Soneri Pane. But the relevant point here, the one I am talking to you, is Raoul's talks of greatest good of weakest number. Gandhiji in his talisman, which is, I repeat, according to me, deeper than Raoul's. Gandhiji talks of Antyodaya, okay, then Vinoba comes up, picks up Antyodaya as a starting point, and then goes on to define Sarvodaya. Sarvodaya. So from Antyodaya to Sarvodaya. So rooted in Indian philosophy. So if Indian philosophy, one statement is Bahujana Hitaya, Bahujana Sukhaya. That straight away comes from our deep, profound Bharatiya thinking. Bahujana Hitaya, Bahujana Sukhaya may probably relate to utilitarianism, greatest good of greatest number. May probably rhyme with Bahujana Hitaya, Bahujana Sukhaya. But for deep, profound Bharatiya thinking, Bahujana Hitaya, Bahujana Sukhaya is a starting point. Okay. Our goal is Sarvajana Hitaya, Sarvajana Sukhaya. So it goes to Sarvodaya. From Antyodaya to Sarvodaya. Antyodaya, okay, as a starting point. And also try to understand a very important significance I'm telling you, that Antyodaya, okay, is the priority to be assigned by the state, because even state has scarce resources. So when the resources are scarce, who all are to be given the priority? The Gandhian thinking continued by Vinoba, it says that when the state has resources scarce, the priority should be given to the Antyodaya part. And then those elements of the society which are strong, which can stand on their own, will have to take care of themselves. But the state has to take care of the last man on the ladder. Vinoba actually gave a beautiful metaphor saying that the mother loves all her kids equally, and still mother pays greater attention to the weaker of her kids. Some extra milk, some extra vitamins, some extra attention also. Not because she loves the stronger kid any less, but because as a mother, she has to attend to a weaker part. So for Indian, even political thinking, mind you, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is not just an emotional sentence. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam also has a bearing upon the Indian, that is Bharatiya, political thinking, and therefore political institutions, and therefore the role assigned to political institutions. In my second point I want to share with you today is my concern and expectation that your study of pol science has begun in the right earnest, that you know the minimum required standard reading list that I would call mandatory reading for pol science optional students, that you have been told by Ketan and everyone, and accordingly you have started planning your own studies. Point number 2. Okay. Again here, for example, you want to study constitution for GS. Okay. Maybe Lakshmikant is mandatory, and while nothing ever is sufficient, but for the purposes of constitution for GS, Lakshmikant may be considered okay. But you, pol science optional, huh? Then 2 volumes by Granville Austin. I hope Ketan has told you, or someone else. Granville Austin is a British person who is like one of the best experts on Indian constitution. He has, I must tell you, 2 utterly extraordinary volumes on Indian constitution. The name of the first volume is Making of a Constitution. The first volume is called Making of a Constitution, and as the title is self-explanatory, that book focuses on how Indian constitution was made. I must tell you, it is a beautiful book. I must tell you, you will slightly tough, okay, but you will thoroughly enjoy it and begin to develop an insight into Indian constitution. Second volume is this one. Actually, even the first volume has a similar cover, huh? The same color scheme, the same font, the same style of this thing. But the second volume is Working of the Constitution. And then, as now this name also is self-explanatory, Working of a Democratic Constitution. Okay. The subtext is Working of a democratic constitution, a history of the Indian experience. Huh? So as the title is self-explanatory, it is about how India's constitution actually came to be implemented. This book goes up to about the emergency. And broadly speaking, the experience after, say, 1977 is rarely dealt with it. Okay. But the first 30 years of our constitution, I am expecting you to remember that the constitution is not just letters on paper. Constitution is what comes to be implemented. Probably the most profound comment on the constitution comes, of course, from none other than Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar himself. When the constitution was complete, and now it was to be dedicated to the country and to commence from January 26, 1950, someone asked Babasaheb Ambedkar, how good is the constitution? Ambedkar's deepest and most profound answer was to the question, how good is this constitution? He said, the constitution is as good or as bad as the people who would implement it. What a profound comment, man. Just think about it. I know I could conduct another 2-hour session, full 2 hours, just explaining this one sentence. Just explaining this one sentence. Huh? Now, my point here is, I can see that you have got it, that those who have pol science as optional would do well to read these 2 volumes by Granville Austin. And that's not where our understanding of the constitution, and I will begin to see, okay, I will not. Huh? According to me, there are 2 more mandatory books for constitution alone. Huh? One is a small book, about 200 pages. Our Constitution by Subhash Kashyap. Great person. I don't need to separately say that I have been in contact with him during my years as an officer. He was Secretary Lok Sabha for some 30 years of his life. Subhash Kashyap. It is small, beautiful, lucid explanation of the constitution, but takes us deeper, and you will begin to develop insight. Okay. For the time being, the last book I want to mention is Introduction to Constitution by Durga Das Basu. It's a slightly tougher book. You may do well to carefully read it. And I'm always there to tell you, like, I'm happily telling you hundreds of books if you are interested. Go on telling you hundreds of books to be carefully read. But our goal is to clear the prelims. So focus your reading on now prelims and mains oriented reading. Okay. So similarly, section A, then section B, and the post 1945 world with greater focus on post 1991 world. Whatever are the reasons, but the watch tells me that, I mean, I'm going to say unfortunately, but we have to stop at 1 o'clock. So my spontaneous talk turns into a practically inspired talk. Huh? I'm telling you, I have enjoyed. I hope you have. But I will quickly just mention last 2 points, which actually means that as of today, I'm not picking up any of the 6 questions you have sent to me. But my promise is now we meet every Monday like this. And meanwhile, also send other questions. And next Monday, 11:30, we continue with your questions also. For the time being, I'm just mentioning last 2 points. Just mentioning. Huh? Because one of the 6 questions is also about relevance of marks. Now, explaining Marxism, then ML and Maoism. And for us as pol science students, we will have to also understand Hegel before we start talking about Marx, Lenin, and Mao. That I will do depending on your questions. Especially when it comes to Hegel, I'm sure Ketan will guide you properly. Ketan is infatuated with Hegel because Hegel has a young 19-year-old daughter. Ketan has studied Hegel very well. But after that, I'm there, of course, with all dialectics, and the Hegelian dialectics was inverted by Marx. And then, of course, continued by Lenin and Mao, etc. We will study that. Huh? So the point about leftism. Actually, the question is how far Marx is relevant. Huh? Okay. So let me summarize one line. Okay. Marx is relevant even today. I am not Marxist. I hope you are not Marxists. But Marx is relevant, mind you. Marx has been proven to be wrong on many issues. And when we critically analyze Marx, I'm myself going to point out maybe the flaws, okay, but still the dispassionate method of study, okay, has to tell us that Marx is relevant. Last point I want to make is today's date. I can't close this session without mentioning a happy coincidence. And we are having our first session on 9/11. And there are two 9/11s in human history. The 9/11 of Osama bin Laden, the year was 2001. And according to me, a more important 9/11 of Swami Vivekananda, that was Parliament of Religions in 1893. And even for pol science, it's possible that our knowledge of Vivekananda also will come into play. And the way I have been juxtaposing two 9/11s, right since 9/11 of 2001. I have actually been explaining the whole global paradigm in terms of these two 9/11s. It is Osama bin Laden inspired and executed 9/11 versus Swami Vivekananda inspired 9/11. The vision of hatred, violence versus the vision of Sahishnuta and Sarva Samaveshakata. And the just concluded G20 also is actually in the same tone in which Swami Vivekananda also spoke about India's mission. So it's a coincidence, but a beautiful coincidence that we began our interactions on 9/11. I hope you have enjoyed. I know I have enjoyed. We will continue to enjoy on all Mondays to come, okay? Until then and forever, all my best wishes for all of you.